Okay, have you guys heard about this? VMware on a Raspberry Pi. Like, what? Like, that's crazy. But what does that even mean? Well, instead of installing one OS or one operating system on a Raspberry Pi, like Raspbian, boring, we can slice up our Pi. Giving a piece of the Pi to each operating system we want to install. And these are all running at the same time. Basically 3 different computers, but one physical piece of hardware, our Raspberry Pi. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going to install VMware's ESXi on our Raspberry Pi. This is a Type 1 hypervisor. It's the same OS that you would see on massive servers in a data center, except for putting it on this small, tiny device. This technology is called virtualization, and it's what allows us to take a Raspberry Pi like this and blow it up into a million pieces. Oh, not a million, maybe 4 or 5, and we can devote it to separate operating systems. The Raspberry Pi has CPU, memory, and storage resources. We basically slice it up, dividing the resources amongst new operating systems, basically different computers. Now, do you want a Raspberry Pi? Because I'm actually giving this Raspberry Pi away, so enter below. No, I'm just kidding. I'm giving away 2 8GB Raspberry Pis, ones that are not virtualized yet, and the link below. Now, what's killer about this is VMware is virtualization technology that big companies use. It's a skill that if you learned, man, you'd be valuable in the workforce. And the fact that you can learn this on a Raspberry Pi, a relatively cheap little computer, that's amazing. And there's more, check this out. I have 2 Raspberry Pi 4s with 8 gigs of RAM, and I've got them together. And using VMware, I can actually cluster these together. I call these the twins, and they're awesome. Anyways, let's get started. Now, this does involve some steps, and it might feel overwhelming, but don't let it be. I'll walk you through each step. I'll explain what's happening, and we'll make sure you get started with this. So now, what do you need? Well, first, a Raspberry Pi, of course. I highly recommend the 8GB version, which means it has 8 gigs of RAM. 4 will also work, but you'll have a better time with 8, trust me. And I highly recommend you get one of these kits. It gives you everything you need to get started with your Raspberry Pi. And again, I'm giving away 2 of these. If you want to win one, link below. They're awesome. And if you want to buy one, also, link below. And if you decide not to buy the kit, make sure you at least have, well, a Raspberry Pi, a power adapter, a micro HDMI to HDMI cable, and one of these tiny, adorable micro SD cards. As far as size, you won't need a big one. 16, 32, that's going to be good. And then it will help to have some heat sinks or a fan because this sucker's going to get hot running ESXi. And you'll need one of these micro SD USB adapters so you can plug it into your computer and prepare it. Now, specific to this project, you'll want 2 USB flash drives. One can be small, like this one's 16 gigs. The other you want to make kind of bulky, kind of and this one's 64. Actually, I would recommend 64 or 128. I got links below for both. I'll explain why here in a moment. And just like any computer you want to use, because the Raspberry Pi is a computer, you'll need a mouse and keyboard, USB, and a monitor to connect the Raspberry Pi to so you can see it. And like I said, there are a few steps. You'll need some coffee as well. NetworkChuck coffee, link below. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Let's do this. First thing we want to do is update our Raspberry Pi. And this will involve setting up the Raspberry Pi like you normally would. So we'll take our little micro SD card, put it into our USB adapter, and plug that sucker into our computer. To prep our SD card, I'm going to use the Raspberry Pi Imager. You can download for Windows, Mac, Linux. So fire up the Imager tool. First we'll click on Choose OS for our operating system. We're going to make this quick and simple. So we'll do Raspberry Pi OS parentheses other, and I'll choose the Raspberry Pi OS Lite. It will install oh so much faster. And then we'll choose our SD card. Make sure you choose the right one. Mine is right here, 31 gigs. And then click on Write. Coffee break. And once your Pi is done baking, we can take that sucker out of the oven. And now we can slide that micro SD into our Raspberry Pi. And while you're at it, go ahead and plug in your HDMI cable, your keyboard and mouse, and your power. In most cases, plugging in the power will boot this guy up, and we'll give it a few moments to fully come up. Coffee break. Alright, when you see a login like this, let's log in. Username will be Pi, and the password is Raspberry. All lowercase. Now your Raspberry Pi will need internet access. I recommend using the Ethernet cable. Oh yeah. And with internet access established, we'll do one command. Sudo rpi-eeprom-update. Mine is already up to date. If yours isn't or you're not sure, enter this command after that. Sudo rpi-eeprom-update and then -a. No, you gotta do 2 E's and I missed my E. There we go. And then do a sudo reboot. This will reboot your Raspberry Pi. Again, you have to spell things right. My keyboard's not very responsive. There we go. Coffee break. Alright, your Raspberry Pi has been updated. Now we're going to unplug the power and remove the micro SD card. We'll take that same micro SD card, slide that sucker back into our USB adapter, and put it back into our PC. And now we're going to obliterate it. We're going to erase it right now, using our same tool, the Raspberry Pi Imager. Now, watch this. Instead of the operating system being Raspberry Pi OS Lite, we're going to change that to erase. It's just going to format the card for us. I'll choose my card, the same one I used before, except now it's going to go pretty quick. We won't even have time for a coffee break. Go. So now he's clean and fresh, just the way we want him. Let's prep it now. To prep this sucker, we're going to download 2 files, which I have links to below. The first one is our Raspberry Pi firmware. Go ahead and click on that and download it. And then also our UEFI Raspberry Pi firmware. Download that as well. Now, it might take a minute because this firmware guy, he's kind of beefy. But once it's done, let's go and extract those suckers. Right click, extract. And this might also take a minute. There's a ton of files in there, so coffee break. If you get this replace or skip file notification, just hit skip. And then extract the other one as well. Shouldn't take near as long, I hope. Yeah, that was done. Easy. So now with our 2 folders unzipped, should look like this right here. We have a few things we have to do, so follow carefully. First, we're going to open up this firmware master folder. I'm going to jump in there real quick. Going to jump in the firmware master folder again, and then there'll be a folder called boot. Jump in there, and we should be done jumping for a moment. All the files in this folder, we want these. Every one of them. So we're going to hit Control A or Command A, depending on what you're using, and I'll copy all of these, just like so. From there, I'm going to jump into my USB drive, the one we just destroyed and erased. It should be empty, looking just like this. And I'm going to paste everything we just copied. Boom, just like that. Boom, okay. Now, real quick before we leave here, there are 4 files that start with the name kernel. Here they are right here. We don't need those guys. We don't want them here, so we're going to take them out real quick. I'm going to select these 4 kernel files and delete. Yes, I do want to permanently delete these guys, and they're gone. Okay, cool. Now we're almost done with our SD card, but we got one more step here. We're going to get back to our 2 folders that we extracted, but instead of opening the firmware master, we're going to open up the rpi-eeprom firmware _v120. Jump into that folder, and just like before, we want all these files right here. So I'm going to hit Control A, copy all these guys, every one of them, and then I'll get back to my USB drive. Here, we're going to paste everything we just copied. And in this case, we do want to replace every file that we're copying. So do that now. Now, we're almost done. Don't worry. One more thing we have to do. There's a file in here called config.txt. There he is right there. Go ahead and open that. Nothing too scary here. We're going to do one thing. At the very end of this file, we're going to add GPU_mem equals 16. This will just optimize a few things with the Raspberry Pi. And then I'll hit Control S or just File, Save, whatever text editor you're using, just save it. Close that, and we're done. Remove the SD card from your computer and plug it back into your Raspberry Pi. But don't boot it up yet. We still have one more thing to do. We're almost there, I promise. We're getting closer. But now we're going to install VMware ESXi on our Raspberry Pi. But first, we need the installer. This is where one of your USB flash drives will come in, and you'll want to choose your smaller sized USB flash drive. So go ahead and plug that sucker into your computer. We'll then download the ESXi installer from VMware. I got a link below. Go ahead and click on that link. You'll see a page that looks like this, and here is where you'll download your installer. ESXi-ARM-ISO is already selected. If it's not, make sure you select that. Click on I understand everything and I accept everything, and click on download. Wait, hold on. I have to log into something? Yeah, it's a free account. Don't worry. If you don't already have one, sign up. Just click on sign up now, and you'll be able to download this ISO, this installer, for free. Once downloaded, now we have to actually put it on our USB drive. Now you can't just drag and drop it onto a USB drive, you have to use a special tool. If you're using Windows like me, my favorite one is called Rufus. I got a link below, go ahead and download Rufus. I'll download the latest one right here. For Mac, there's a tool called Etcher, which is great, and for Linux, I got a guide down below. So go ahead and launch Rufus, select your flash drive as the device. If you only have one plugged in, it'll default select that. And then we'll select our ISO that we just downloaded. It'll be the VMware VMvisor install 700 whatever arch blah blah blah. On cluster size, I'll change that to 32 kilobytes, and that's it. I'll click start and let it burn. Okay, so now we're finally ready to install VMware on our Raspberry Pi. And it's all downhill from here. This is pretty easy. So take out your flash drive from your computer and plug that sucker into your Raspberry Pi. So before you power it up, make sure you have your microSD card inserted into the Raspberry Pi and your flash drive inserted. And make sure you have your mouse and keyboard handy because we gotta be quick on this one. You ready? Let's do this. As soon as you plug that sucker in and it starts to power up, I want you to start pressing the escape key. Just keep pressing it until you see the screen you're about to see here. Press it, press it, press it, press it. Keep going, don't stop. Ah, there we go. Here we're gonna do a few things. It'll be quick, I promise. First, we're going to use our directional arrows to get down to Device Manager. Now, real quick before we go anywhere, I want to show you something. At the top right, it says we have 3,072 megabytes of RAM, or 3 gigs of RAM. If you have an 8 gig like me, you're like, wait, hold on a second. I've got 8. You're lying. And it is lying. We have to make him tell the truth. So we're going to go to Device Manager right here. We're going to scroll down to Raspberry Pi Configuration. We'll then go to Advanced Configuration. And then right here, this jerk limits RAM to 3 gigabytes. Why? Why do you do that? So we're going to disable that. So hit enter on that, change that to disabled, and then we're going to hit F10. F10 is going to save it. Hit Y to confirm, which will save it. Then we'll hit escape, 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 and then we'll scroll on down to continue, which will reboot the Raspberry Pi, and we'll have to start pressing escape again. You ready? Here we go. Continue. It's going to say, do you want to reset? Hit enter once more. Yes, I do. And then start hitting the escape key. Don't let it get past you. Don't let it get past you. No, we'll be fine. I'm just kidding. Back to where we were. So now we're going to boot into our flash drive, the one we plugged in, the one that has the VMware installer on it. So I want to scroll down to Boot Manager. Hit that. And then you'll select your flash drive. It should look something like this. Mine is SanDisk Cruiser Glide. Those names are hilarious. Anyways, now before we hit enter, calm down. Once it starts to launch the VMware installer, we're going to change something. And just like us hitting the escape key, we have to be ready to hit this key combination. It's going to be Shift-O. You're going to hold down Shift and O. Ready? Here we go. I'm going in. Go ahead and do it now. Now. Okay, whew. Now if you missed it and you see a big yellow page, it's okay. Just unplug your Raspberry Pi, plug it back in. You'll be fine. You can do it again. And you should see something like this. Run Weasel CD-ROM boot, which is, I don't know what that is. Sounds funny. If you know what that is, let me know below. I have no idea. Here we're going to append or add something to the end of this command. We're going to hit space, and we're going to add auto partition. Now case is important here. Make sure you match my case exactly. I put it in the description as well. So auto partition OS data size equals 8192. Now, what is this? Well, make sure that the ESXi install won't take up our entire flash drive. So I have a 64 gig flash drive. Right now, I'm telling this guy, don't get greedy. You can only have 8 gigs in my flash drive for ESXi. The rest of my flash drive I want to use for installing VMs, Ubuntu, CentOS, all this kind of stuff. If I didn't do this, it would use up the entire thing for ESXi, and I'd have to use another flash drive to add VMs. So anyways, just do this. So once you add this to the command, go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to do it. Ready? Whew, I'm excited. I love seeing this on a Raspberry Pi. Like, I've done this a million times on other hardware, massive servers. But on something this small, this is crazy. So give it a moment. It'll ask you for a few more things here. Coffee break. All right, time to install some ARM Fling. Hit enter, accept the agreements, the EULA. Hit F11. Now it's scanning your Raspberry Pi to see what devices it can install ESXi to. Now the flash drive we have in there just has the installer. It wants to install something else onto another flash drive. That's where our other flash drive comes in. This is the larger flash drive that I recommended you have. Mine is 64 gigs. If you have a smaller one, that's fine. But this is where your VMs are going to live. So notice right now, before I plug it in, I have my installer flash drive installed. I'm going to plug my big boy in right now. And I'll hit F5 to refresh and scan for new stuff. And there's my big boy. I know he's big because he's extreme, and he has 58 gigs available. So I'll hit enter to continue. It is going to destroy the disk and install something new, so be okay with that. And I'll hit enter. US default for me, hit enter, and then my root password. Once your passwords match, hit enter, and that's pretty much it, I think. Oh no, one more thing. F11. Here we go. You're hitting the big red button to install. Install. That's exciting. I love this. Look at that. Installing ESXi on a Raspberry Pi. That's just crazy to me. Perfect time for a coffee break. And by the way, this won't take very long at all. And bam, that was actually pretty dang quick. So now, remove the installation flash drive. Not the one you just installed onto, not the big one, but the smaller one. Just took mine out. Now we're going to reboot. But same thing as before, we're going to hit escape as soon as it boots up to get into our configuration. So enter, just going to hang tight while I see this message, and then once here we go. I'm going to start hitting escape right now. Cool, back in the manager. Last thing we have to do here, I promise. We're going to scroll down to our Boot Maintenance Manager. We're going to jump in there, and then we'll go to our boot options. And we're going to scroll down to change boot order. We want to make sure that our new flash drive that has VMware ESXi installed on it is the device that it boots from first. So I'll change that boot order. I'll hit enter right here. And I'll scroll down to my flash drive, which is the SanDisk Extreme. And then I'll use the plus symbol to move it to the very top. So bam, 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 bam. Once it's at the top, hit enter, and then F10 to save, hit Y, and we're good. So I'll escape to get out of here. Escape, 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 and then jump down to continue. And then we're done. Just hands off. Let it boot into ESXi. And coffee break. And it's up. It's done. It's crazy. Now, if you have your Raspberry Pi plugged into Ethernet, then you probably already have an IP address if you have DHCP. There's mine right there. I'm going to go to it. You want to go to it? Let's go to it. I'm going to access my vSphere on a Raspberry Pi. It's insane. Here we go. It's got a self-signed cert. That's fine. Yours will too. I'll click advanced and proceed. And oh my gosh, look at this. Yes. The login will be root, your username, and then the password you set when you set this thing up. Login. Yes. Look at this thing. I don't want to join nothing. Okay. ESXi, vSphere, VMware, on this little bitty guy. It's so crazy. Because, again, I've installed this on massive servers for years. And to see something like this, capable of running multiple virtual machines on this credit card-sized computer, like, that's crazy. Like, legit, when I bought this Raspberry Pi, I went to Best Buy, and the lady was checking me out. She was like, what is this thing? I'm like, it's a computer. She goes, what? That's a computer? I'm like, yeah, it's a computer. People don't believe this. But the fact that we can do this, mind-blowing. Anyways, now some of you might be looking at this and going, okay, now what? Because this might be your first time looking at vSphere, ESXi, VMware, which is amazing because, goodness, it's what a lot of corporations use. It's kind of the standard for administering virtual machines. So you get a chance to play with this on a Raspberry Pi for free. I mean, oh my gosh, how cool is that? Sorry, I'm about to like blow up. Coffee break. So now let's play with a few things here. Now, if you follow my steps exactly, yours will look like this. You're going to have storage. Storage is required. Mine is already set up because we did that little configuration with our flash drive. If you don't do that, if you don't see this, if you don't have a data store here, I'll cover how to fix that here in a moment. But first, let's play. Let's add a virtual machine to our Raspberry Pi. Again, nuts. Now, you'll need images or ISOs that are meant for the ARM architecture, which the Raspberry Pi is. Thankfully, there's a lot of support for that. So first, Ubuntu server for ARM. We'll go ahead and download that right now. I got a link below for that, and once you have that downloaded, let's go ahead and create our first virtual machine. So right here, create or register a VM. Create a new virtual machine. Next. This is just so cool. Name it NetworkChuck or Ubuntu. Guest OS family will be Linux. Guest OS version will be, which you can't see because I'm scrolling down here, but it'll be Ubuntu Linux 64-bit. Click on Next. It's going to use that data store, the only one I have. Click Next. It's crazy. Now here you can tweak your settings. You can add more CPU, you can add more memory to it. I'm gonna keep mine at default right now. Really the only thing I'm gonna change right now is the CD DVD drive. Here's what we'll tell it to use that ISO we just downloaded. So instead of host device, I'm gonna change this to data store ISO file. And it's gonna say, hey, where's it at? And I'm gonna say, I don't have it, so I'm gonna upload it and choose it from my downloads. There it is right here. Now this might take a moment, it's okay. Coffee break. All right, uploaded, I'll select it and select it again. I'll make sure it's connected, and we'll connect it power on, and then next, and finish. It's going to create my virtual machine, and it's created. There it is. It's right there. It's right there. Okay. I want to jump in there real quick. It's ready. I think it's ready. I'm going to hit power on, and it's going to power on. I'm right here at the menu. I'm going to go ahead and install Ubuntu server on my Raspberry Pi. Okay, NetworkChuck is ready. Booted up, running on a Raspberry Pi. I mean, it's amazing. But at the same time, I also built a few more VMs. 2 more to be exact, as you can see here. First, I've got Kali here. Bam. Okay, that's pretty cool. I got some CentOS here. Check this out. That's right, GUI. I got a GUI. How does it perform? Not great. it's a Raspberry Pi. Come on, give it a break. So GUIs, I would say, aren't the best thing. But it's pretty cool. You can deploy multiple operating systems as you're learning, playing, messing with stuff. It's the best. And if I look at my ESXi host, which is my Raspberry Pi, I'm running 3 VMs right now. He's doing pretty well. And I also set up another one as well. I got my other Raspberry Pi, and it's running 2 VMs. NetworkChuck 2, and I got another CentOS box, just to CLI. But with my 2 Raspberry Pis, right now I'm running 5 different virtual machines. How insane is that? Now again, if you're new to the VMware world, vSphere, this web portal right here, is how we control our ESXi host. So Raspberry Pi 1, Raspberry Pi 2, but you can also control multiple ESXi hosts through a platform called vCenter, which I have right here. Let's go to it. vcenter.networkchuck.local. Gotta log in. With vCenter, you can get kind of crazy with this stuff. So I can add these hosts to here, which I'll do right now. Jump into my data center, actions, add host. It's so cool. Just put in the IP addresses of my ESXi host. 1 down, 1 to go. Just think about this though. If you're trying to learn VMware, which is a super valuable skill in IT, this is a relatively low-cost way to do this. vSphere, ESXi, vMotion, DRS, all kinds of stuff you can do with a little microcomputer that costs like what? The whole package costs $100 each? It's crazy. Normally, you'd have to have a pretty killer lab to practice this kind of technology. And vSAN, you can do vSANs and stuff here too. I mean, it's crazy, man. And just like that, I'm managing my 2 ESXi hosts and vCenter, which enables me to do some more crazy things like, I don't know, let's cluster them together. Yeah, that's right, you heard me right. Cluster. Just go over here to Actions, New Cluster. I'm going to call it the Twins and say yes to everything. Yes, I want it all. Yes, everything. Okay. And then I jump into my cluster and I just add host to the cluster. Add host, existing host, bam, bam, and done. Now, yes, there's a lot more involved in making sure this cluster works great. Believe me, there's a lot. But step back and think about this for a second. A Raspberry Pi, a small little microcomputer that you can buy at the store. Just itself costs like $35 to, $45, $50. You can use a couple of these things, 4, 5, 6, however many you have. You can use them to learn about enterprise virtualization. This is stuff that we used to have to buy crazy lab equipment to do this. Now, oh my gosh, it's so easy. Now, just a few last minute things I want to show you. First, storage can be an issue when you have little Raspberry Pis and you're running off of, flash memory. But if you're like me and you have your own NAS, your network attached storage, I got a Synology, which it's amazing. If you want one, I got a link below. But I added that is an NFS storage. So if I go to my storage here on each of my devices here, I've got my Synology, which I'm running my VMs off the Synology right now. It's fantastic. You could run it as an iSCSI as well, as a LUN. Now, I'm not going to cover how to set that up here. This video would be way too long. But there's one more thing I want to show you, and that's, hey, I'm out of storage. What do I do now? Well, you could add just another USB drive, or maybe just a USB hard drive, which I'll do right now. So I connected it. Nothing here so far. If I go to my storage and I try to create a new data store, it'll be a standard new VMFS data store. It's not finding any devices connected. It's an easy fix though. We have to turn off the USB arbitrator. You see, by default, VMware will try to connect your USB devices to your actual virtual machines. So you can plug a USB into your Raspberry Pi and have it kind of plugged into maybe CentOS or NetworkChuck. But we don't want that right now. We instead want to use our USB drive as extra storage so we can make a data store. So to turn that off, we're going to go back to the CLI. So I'll make sure I'm at my host right here, and then I'll click on Actions and then SSH console. And it's going to open up right here in the browser. Super cool. Yeah, I want to trust it. Got to log in, and I'm in. Just 2 commands, super simple. First one is /etc or etc or etc, how I like to say it. Then another /net.d/USB arbitrator, and then space, stop. We're going to stop that service. Stopping now. And so it remains stopped. Next time your Raspberry Pi reboots, we're going to put in chkconfig space USB arbitrator off. And that was it. Not so bad, right? So let's get back to our vSphere here, our portal. And let's go back to our storage. We're going to click on devices. And now we do have 2 devices here. And the SanDisk right here is the one I just plugged in. Jump in there. And what I want to do is click on Actions and clear partition table. Yes, delete everything. And now I can create a new data store. Must store, use full disk, next, and finish. Yes, I'm sure. And just like that, I've got another data store, USB. Awesome. VMware ESXi on a Raspberry Pi. That rhymes, but it's amazing. Let me know in the comments below if you go and actually make an ESXi host out of a Raspberry Pi. It's a cool thing to do. And if you've never actually messed with VMware or created an ESXi host, do it now. Have the fun, have the practice. Again, you can use a 4 gig, preferably an 8 gig, and it's gotta be a Raspberry Pi 4. Otherwise, you're out of luck. But seriously, it's the coolest thing ever. It's awesome. And again, I'm giving away 2 of the 8 gig Raspberry Pi kits. If you want to enter that contest, link below. But guys, that's all I got. Raspberry Pis, gosh, what can't they do? And if they can't do something, well, then get more of them and combine them and they can do something else. Now, what more should I do with the twins over there? VMware ESXi, done. Got that done. What else should I do? Let me know. And if you like this video, man, hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing here, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to see more of this or help me do more of this kind of stuff, consider joining my membership. Got a join button right there at the bottom. Or join thisisit.io. Myself, David Bombal, Jeremy Chara, we're doing some cool stuff over there. Yep, that's all I got. I'll catch you guys later.